Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
I will not attempt to summarize these four excellent presentations, but merely to point out that we have heard various national instruments being implemented in several countries across the region in attempt to reduce those costs. And the final presentation indicated the kind of losses we're speaking about by region, by percentage of GDP, by sector, and by region. So with that, I would like to thank the presenters for the presentation and to point out that the representative of Peru has left copies of those publications, and also to point out that Peru is going to be the host of the next Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, where I'm sure we're going to hear more about your work in this area. So thank you very much to the panelists.
Buenos días a todos.
Good morning to all. The next session talks about advances in disaster risk reduction in urban areas towards resilience. I will be chairing this session and would like to invite Aura Saldaña, Mayor of Sabana del Mar of the Dominican Republic, José Corral, Mayor of Santa Fe, Argentina, Paul Granda, ex-Mayor of Cuenca in Ecuador, and Jonas Donizetti, Mayor of Campinas, Sao Paulo, Brazil. My name is Emilio Graterón, and I am ex-mayor of the Chacao municipality of the capital of Venezuela, Caracas. Very well, the mechanism that we will be using for this panel is the following. Every one of the members of the panel is going to make a brief presentation, 5 minutes long, presenting their ideas, experiences of their municipalities, and then we will open up a dialogue and we will have the opportunity to share ideas, answer questions, and propose specific issues regarding the vision which from the cities we would like to propose for the post-2015 framework. I would like to thank all of you for sharing this panel. And we will begin with the ladies as usual. I leave with you Aura Saldaña, Mayor of Aura del Mar from the Dominican Republic. Good morning. I would like to thank you all for giving me the opportunity of participating in this session regarding disaster risk reduction from the perspective of local governments. In the Dominican Republic, since the inclusion of disaster risk management in our legislation, with the adoption of Law 147 from 2002, principles were established and instruments to guide their inclusion in public policy through a national system of PMR. This system, in principle, had very low levels of participation of local governments because of the concentration of human, technical, material, and financial resources at the central government level. However, disaster experience resulting from hydrometeorological phenomena has promoted amongst authorities and technical people responsible the awareness that it is insurmountable to involve local governments in policies, plans, and programs for for disaster risk reduction to tackle effectively both prevention as well as the occurrence of disasters and urban resilience. Local stakeholders are key, both regarding prevention as well as in actions of mitigation and response. It is thus something which involves local governments to be able to put into place programs and actions foreseen in the national policies. Take into consideration that a large part of the disaster risk reduction measures have to do with the ordainment or land use and planning of the territory, which are usually responsibilities of local governments. The awareness of this reality has promoted the steady adaptation by the Dominican government of the participation of local authorities in the structuring of the PMR national program, including greater responsibility and promoting greater responsibility at the national and local level. This is why we have had international collaboration through a set of projects that have been carried out, above all during the last 6 years. However, we must point out that in spite of advances in institutional planning and multisectorial issues, the capacities and resources available still have very important limitations. Regarding institutional capacities, segmentation of management entities, and national level public service, this has difficulted coordinated actions with the with the necessary effectiveness and speed. Also, the approval and set into place of the National Development Strategy 2030 includes a strategic line and several objectives which are specific to the national capacities and local capacities to transform our urban communities and rural communities into communities that have risk management capacities and resilience. An important point is that from the National Development Strategy 2030, the concept and policies related to climate change are included as a factor to increase the potential disaster risk. Precisely, tending to this perspective, the General Direction of Development and Land Use has developed a very broad program of technical assistance that accompanies and promotes a paradigm of disaster risk reduction (DRR), also to local governments. I'm sorry. Also, these organisms has foreseen the strengthening and development of land use planning activities of local governments. Currently, they are in the process of putting together both the first national plan of land use as well as the framework law of territorial land use of the country. Both instruments will serve as support to the capacities and actions of local governments in what has to do with the planning and land use of the territory. Another relevant aspect has been the promotion of the campaign called Resilient Cities, as well as of the risk reduction units in Dominican municipalities. We must highlight that even today, not all of the municipalities that have a high risk potential have formed already these units. However, in those municipalities, what we have been able to understand is that there is a need to supply these technical management units. We have been able to see how effective they are. To summarize, we can say that at national level, we have made a lot of progress, but we will leave that part of the presentation to our colleague Luna Paulino in his country statement. We can mention but a few, like the review of the risk management plan, of emergency plans, the creation of some PMR committees, review of school and health infrastructures. He has put into practice the 911 system, amongst others, but we will leave that to our country statement. We still face some challenges, and amongst them we can highlight this widespread problem, which is the scarcity of resources, which is a challenge, especially locally, to develop risk management. The municipalities of our country, even though there is a law that allocates them 10% of the resources, we are still only receiving around 4% of the resources that should be destined to municipalities. Obviously, this financial situation hampers both the facilitation of technical and logistic capacities, as well as working on preventive actions such as infrastructure suitable to climate change effects and reduction and disaster risk reduction. However, the main challenge is the coordinated adoption in all of the territories by the authorities, both national and local authorities, as well as by the private sector, by the civil society, the educational community, and those community leaders, of the principles and methods that are necessary for the suitable reduction in the risk of disasters. There are some other challenges, and for example, the technical challenge. We have to move from national plans to local plans. We could also discuss the need to supply infrastructure for prevention and mitigation. Finally, a pending challenge is that of large population areas that are in a situation of poverty or extreme poverty and who are living precariously in zones of the highest level of vulnerability. In our country, half the population lives in poverty areas. And to conclude, I would like to refer to two aspects which in my experience are closely related, and these are the relevance of public-private partnerships within the framework of RRD and the very high potential for commitment of local governments with measurable indicators and verifiable indicators. We have been able to detect that the stakeholders of the private sector are undertaking position that is more understanding because of the awareness that has been built regarding the negative impact of not behaving according to the principles of DRR. Finally, the putting into operations of plans, programs, and preventive actions should be framed within a set of measurable indicators with short and mid-term goals, so that from the local government level we can establish systematic advances, share our experiences, and learn from local best practices. Thank you very much.